So most respected Professor Pathak ji, he is our today's eminent speaker, and my dear colleagues and my very dear students present here. So we are very happy to be have Professor H. Pathak. It's actually not only he is the director of National Institute of Abiotic Stress Management, Maharashtra, but above all, he is a very prolific scholar. He is a very prolific researcher. Afterwards, when my colleague will introduce him, then I tell the student, you can understand such a great scientist in agricultural chemistry and soil science, Professor Pathak is. And above all, he is a good teacher. So on the very outset, we, on behalf of this college, on behalf of Botany department, on behalf of all the faculty members, students, we express our heartiest regard and sincere welcome to Professor H.K. Pathak. Sir, please accept our heartiest regard and sincere, this welcome to you, sir. And I tell the students, especially those are present in this platform, both those are actually newly admitted and some old students also come. You listen the talk of Professor Pathak, and you freely interact with him without any hesitation, because he is a very good teacher. It is the quality of a good teacher. Always he expects the student actually interact with him. So without any hesitation, you interact with him. I think this interaction will be the great asset and memory in future, and it is also joy in this evening. So with these few words, I once again extend my heartiest regard and sincere thanks to Professor H.K. Pathak, and thanks all the students and our faculty member joining in this online platform in this beautiful evening for this webinar purpose. Thanks all of you. Thank you.
Now I request Dr. Ovik Kumar Choudhury to introduce Dr. H. Pathak sir to our students.
Thank you, Dr. Roy, for giving me this opportunity to introduce Dr. Himanshu Pathak to this August gathering. So, obviously, as our Principal Maharaj has already said, he is a very well-known scholar in this field. Dr. Pathak did his graduation in agriculture from Benares Hindu University in 1986, and subsequently he did his post-graduation in soil science and agricultural chemistry from Indian Agricultural Research Institute in 1988, and followed it up by his PhD in soil science and agricultural chemistry from the same institute, that is Indian Agricultural Research Institute, in 1992. Subsequently, he gained postdoctoral experiences at University of Essex in the United Kingdom, and did a second postdoctoral work at Institute of Meteorology and Climate Research, Germany. Dr. Pathak has a very extensive professional history, where he had remained visiting scientist at IRRI, Philippines, and CSIR Land and Water Institute in Australia. He was also a senior scientist at several remained scientist in several scale at IARI. Then he was a co-facilitator of the Rice Wheat Consortium at Indian Rice Research Institute. Then he was also a professor at the discipline of environmental science at IARI from 2013 to 2016. Later on, he became the principal scientist in the same institute, and he became the director of ICAR, National Rice Research Institute at Cuttack, Orissa, from 2016 to 2020. And now he is the director of ICAR, National Institute of Abiotic Stress Management, from February 2020 onwards. Now, he has also done extensive publications with more than 200 research papers, 31 review papers, 27 popular articles, 12 books. He has also received several awards and recognitions from institutes like the National Academy of Agricultural Science, West Bengal Academy of Science and Technology, Indian National Science Academy, National Academy of Sciences, and the Indian Climate Congress in Bhubaneswar. Also, he has received several international awards and recognitions like the Alexander Humboldt Fellowship. Then he was the lead author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the 5th Assessment Report, as well as the lead author for the refinement to the IPCC guidelines for national greenhouse gas inventories. Along with this, he has earned several national awards as well, some of which are the Rafi Ahmed Kidwai Award for Indian Council of Agricultural Research, then the Platinum Jubilee Award lecture of ISCA. So obviously he has an extensive academic as well as professional career. He is also president of several professional societies like the president of Association of Rice Research Workers, Cuttack, Orissa, and he has remained the editor of different journals like the Indian Journal of Agricultural Science, Agricultural Research, which is a NAS journal, then Indian Journal of Agronomy, and he has also been involved with teaching and student guidance. He has remained a faculty member of the Postgraduate School of the Indian Agricultural Research Institute, and he has supervised 3 MSc and 6 PhD students in the discipline of environmental science at IARI New Delhi. So these are some of the great achievements of Professor Himanshu Pathak, and it's indeed a great opportunity for us, both the students as well as the faculty member, to listen to him and get enriched to the aspect of what he will be explaining and presenting to us. So welcome, Dr. Himanshu Pathak, and I request you to deliver your presentation and lecture to this August gathering. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaudhary, Dr. Roy, and of course, Honorable Principal Maharaj sir, and all my students who have joined online today in this very beautiful evening. Let me express my heartfelt gratitude and also a kind of joy and honor to be invited to talk to the newly admitted students in one emerging area of research, which is abiotic stress management. So let me share my presentation. Is the presentation visible?
Yes,
Is
sir.
the present? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Am I clearly audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, friends, what I will be discussing today with all of you is abiotic stresses in agriculture. What are their impacts and how we can manage those abiotic stresses? Let me start with what you know very well. You have studied in class 9, 10, and of course in details in 11, 12 about the process of photosynthesis. The process by which plants capture energy, they produce food. And then of course the opposite of photosynthesis process is the respiration, by which the food is again converted into energy. And this is the process, photosynthesis, by which all of us get our food. Not only plants get food, all kinds of foods, plants, animal, which we get. And this is a biological process. This is a biotic process. But this biotic process of photosynthesis and also the process of respiration, both are actually controlled by some abiotic factors. Abiotic factors, azoic factors. Abiotic factors include solar radiation from sun, and of course carbon dioxide from air, then water, soil, and so on. So therefore, all these abiotic factors, starting from sun, air, water, soil, these factors are the keys to the biotic process of agriculture, through which we not only get food, but we also get food, fodder, fuel, fertilizer, fiber, and probably you can imagine many other products which we get from this process of photosynthesis. And let me just tell, when we talk of agriculture, it is not only crop production. Agriculture includes, of course, crop production, but also animal husbandry, also fisheries, also poultry, also apiculture, and many other allied activities. But whatever the activities could be, the basic process remains photosynthesis, by which the plants produce food for all of us. And as I said, that biological process or biotic process of photosynthesis is actually controlled by abiotic factors like solar radiation, air, water, and soil. One of my teachers in BSc Agriculture, he used to say, and he was a man of plant physiology and biochemistry. So every time he will enter into the class and start his lecture saying that all the living things are actually the product of non-living things. All the living things are actually made up of non-living things. And that's what the basis of all these abiotic factors and all. Friends, we all have studied about Akash, Agni, Vayu, Prithvi, Jal. These are the Pancha Mahabhutas, Panchotattas, and these 5 elements are the keys for crop production, for animal production, for human health, and so on. But unfortunately, in most of the time, rather almost every time, these factors are not in optimum or not in balanced condition. They are either not available in sufficient amount, whether it is water or air, or sometimes they are available in excess, causing some kind of problems. So whenever these abiotic factors are not in optimum, or whenever they are not in balance, when they are in imbalanced condition, then only the problems of stress comes. Stress in Bengali, you can say pidon ba chap, and of course, probably in English you understand is better, stress. Before I go into the impacts of stress on agriculture, let me define what the stress we mean over here. And I'm sure all of you remember what you studied in 9, 10 or even 11, 12, that stress physically, it is a force per unit area. You remember your physics textbook. Chemically, it is a trigger that alters a particular chemical process. Biologically, of course, it is a stimulus affecting growth of an organism. And of course, psychologically, all of you know, psychologically stress, all of us are sometimes or the other is stress. Some of us, of course, are quite more stress, some are less, but everybody probably, you may find they are some kind of stress at some point of time. But let us simplify these things. If you want to simplify these stresses, then stress can be divided into 2 classes. One is abiotic stress, which is mostly physical or chemical, which I was explaining, air, water, soil, solar radiation. And these abiotic stresses are the result of either excess or deficit of a particular factor. So that's how abiotic stresses are. There could be biotic stresses, and these are biological, like insect, like disease, like bacteria, like actinomycetes, like fungus. And most of the time, these are excess. So excess of these biological stresses we will call some kind of problems, and those are biotic. But whether it is abiotic or biotic, they actually affect the processes of plant, soil, water, or microbial processes. And you know, these processes are very, very important for crop production, for plant health, for human health, animal health, and so on. So basically, this is in a very simple way to understand what the stress is. These are the stresses. Now, whenever a particular stress or a factor is causing some kind of problem, we can call it as a stressor. And the stressor could be due to moisture, either it could be less of moisture, drought, or could be excess of water, flood. It could be nutrient, maybe low nutrients, so nutrient deficiency, or maybe high amount of nutrient causing some kind of toxicity of the nutrient. Similarly, radiation could be high, low, even sometimes lightning. Temperature, high temperature, low temperature, both are not good. Pollution could be chemical pollution, physical pollution, microbial pollution. And of course, salinity could be salinity, alkalinity, acidity due to excess presence of salt, or even it could be mechanical, wind, hailstorm, compaction. So all of this, just I've listed only a few, there could be some more also. All of these cause some kind of stress, some kind of problems to plants, to animals. You can just see this particular diagram. When you can see the rice plant is growing and there is good rain or irrigation. So if you can see this one, the water earlier was in good amount, but now when water is depleting and soil is slowly losing the moisture, then plant is going to suffer from the stress. So whenever transpiration or evapotranspiration exceeds water uptake, plants will be in stress. Plants will be in stress. So when there is no rain, you are not providing irrigation, and soil moisture is also depleted to a certain extent, and that time transpiration still is taking place, evaporation is still taking place, and that time the plants will be in stress. And this is what exactly which we call as drought stress, which we call as moisture stress. Now, not only one factor, but whenever these stresses come, they disrupts all the cycles like water cycle, carbon cycle, nutrient cycle. For example, in the normal condition without stress, all these cycles operate in a slow motion. All you can see, water, carbon, nutrient, all are operating in a slow motion. Now, whenever some stress is given, then all these cycles will be operating in a faster motion. Same cycle operating, but the speed is more. Whenever the speed is more of a particular cycle, then that cycle is going to lose some of its energy, going to lose water, going to lose carbon as carbon dioxide, going to lose nitrogen by various gases and so on. So the system starts losing this, and then it puts itself into some more of stress, some bigger stress. And as a result, abiotic stresses reduce crop yield. So you can see it could be stress because of radiation, because of soil problem, salinity, excess of these heavy metals. All of these put some kind of stress on the plant. And in the plant, there is some mechanism to respond back to the stresses. That response could be increase in reactive oxygen species, more of photosynthetic activity. But as a result, what will happen? Plant growth will be reduced. Yield subsequently also will be reduced. So the net result of any kind of stress is going to be reduction in crop yield whenever we talk of crop production. Now the net impact of any stress is not going to be governed by only one factor or one parameter. There could be several parameters. For example, it could be because of stress characteristics. How severe is the stress? What is the duration of the stress? How long the plant was under drought condition? How long high temperature was persisting? Number of exposure, how many times it was exposed to the stress, and of course combination of several: drought stress, same time heat stress, same time salinity stress, same time pollution problems. All of these things combined together will be intensifying the stress. Second will be what is the plant characteristics, whether it is going to affect one organ or a tissue, or which development stage of the plant is, and what is the genotype, whether it is a tolerant genotype, whether it is susceptible genotype. I shall discuss a little bit more about that. Then of course, what kind of response mechanism either the plant is taking or we are putting from the outside, whether it is resistant one or susceptible one. All of these things finally will decide what is going to be the impact, whether the plant is going to survive or whether the plant is going to grow, or if the stress is really very severe, then probably the plant or the crop is going to die. So whether it is going to be death. So whether it is survival, growth, or death will be ultimately decided by all of these parameters. Now friends, I can imagine probably that many of you or probably all of you are coming from some kind of village background, so you know agriculture. You know agriculture, you know farmers. You know how farmers of West Bengal, India, and all over the world, they grow their crops. Let me tell you, abiotic stresses are not new. It is not that today only or just last year or last decade it has come. These are the age-old companions of farmers. Friends, agriculture started more or less around 10,000 years back. 10,000 years back. And of course, our systematic agriculture with new technologies and everything also came around 200 years back or so. But since the very first process of agriculture, say around 10,000 years back, all of these abiotic stresses were playing their role. And these are very common and very frequent. Very common means you will find hardly any land in the world, not only in West Bengal or India. In the world, you will find hardly any land which is free from any stress. The stress may not be severe, but it is still having some kind of stress. It could be water stress, it could be salinity stress, it could be temperature stress, and it is frequent. Frequent means it comes very regularly, very frequently, maybe within a crop growing season. Say, for example, rice crop is being grown now, maybe within one rice crop, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the stresses are coming. It is very extensive. Extensive means it is not only affecting only one plot or one field or one farmer. Large number of, for example, if drought comes, then not only one farmer, large number of farmers will be affected. I come basically from Purulia district of West Bengal. And probably all of you know Purulia is very, very known for drought, for water scarcity. And I, from the very childhood, I have observed, I have seen all these stresses. I have suffered, not only me, my family, my villagers, my district, the whole region has suffered, and I have seen how extensive the problem could be. It could also be very intensive. Intensive means sometimes the entire crop may die. Entire rice crop may die. The farmer may not get a single grain out of the field. So it could be extensive, it could be intensive as well. It is very long lasting. For example, if there is drought, very severe drought, and the farmers lose their first crop, so it is not that they are losing the first crop, but subsequently there will be its impact next year, next season, and so on. And then it becomes very expensive as well. As I said, it is very old. It is not that it is happening today. It has been happening for last many, many years, many 100 years or 1,000 years, and it has really influenced farming community all over the world. And therefore, it is very alarming and also very, very crucial. Abiotic stresses are very, very crucial for agriculture. So therefore, we say that farmers are born, live, and die with the abiotic stresses. And those who are having some connectivity with farming, and if some of you are coming from farming families, if your parents are doing farming, then probably all of you understand very well what is the meaning of these stresses and how extensive or intensive it could be. Unfortunately, my friends, that abiotic stresses are intensifying. It is becoming more and more severe. These are becoming more and more stronger. These are becoming more and more intensive. How? Because the climate is changing. I shall not go into details of climate change. That could be a totally different talk altogether. But all of you know that the climate is really, really changing, and that is one of the biggest problems the whole humanity is facing today. Earlier, we were thinking that probably by the end of the century, the temperature may rise up to 2 degrees centigrade, or we are trying to restrict it up to 1.5 degrees centigrade. But as of the latest report of IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they said you need not to wait up to 2100 by the end of the century. In next 15 or 20 years, the temperature is going to rise by 1.5 degrees centigrade. So the one which you are expecting to come in another 70, 80 years later, which may come just after 20 years later. So you can understand what is going to be the severity of the problem. Water stress is increasing, groundwater depleting, drainage problem sometimes in West Bengal, Odisha, it is a big problem. Soil quality is declining, nutrient deficiency is also increasing. I shall give you 1 or 2 examples of that. Pollution is also intensifying or accelerating. All of you know, those particularly who live in cities, say in Kolkata or Mumbai or maybe Delhi particular, it is really very, very difficult. And sometimes, of course, national lockdown or COVID-19, of course, this is very, very rare, but even then during these kinds of problems, stress also intensifies. So if you see that the frequency of cyclone, heavy rain, heat wave, flood, drought, all these extreme events of climate, whether my voice is not audible? Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
audible.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So you can see that the extreme events of climate, cyclone, heavy rain, heat wave, flood, or drought, all are intensifying and their frequency is also increasing. So they are going to be more and more in number and more intensive. So these are the major problems which ultimately will also intensify abiotic stresses because of soil problem, water problem, and so on. Just let me give you one or two examples. This is the drought frequency map of India. And what we tried to do is to map drought frequency in India since 1980, so let's say last 40 years or so. And if you see these maps, these are the decadal maps. So in the year of 80 to 89, then 90 to 99, 2000 to 9, and then the last one, 2010 to 19, you will simply see the color of the maps. More colorful is the map, more frequency is the drought. So you can see, without going into the details, that the drought frequency in our country is increasing, and increasing even in last 3-4 decades also. Groundwater aquifer is depleting. All of you know that we are now extracting more and more amount of groundwater. This particular map where my cursor is, each and every dot is a dot for one tube well of different capacities, of course. Some are of heavy pump, some are of lower one. But what you can see that the groundwater is depleting. Of course, the problem is more severe in our northwestern part, Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh. West Bengal is not that much affected, but the problem is still there. But of course, northwestern part is the one where groundwater is depleting every year at a rate of 1.2 meter per year. And of course, you can all imagine that what is going to be the net result or impact of that. Not only groundwater is depleting, but the surface water, wherever it is, whether it is a lake, whether it is your village pond, or maybe a river, all of these are getting polluted. It is really alarming to know that today probably every water bodies of our country, you will not find a single water body which is free from pollution. Not only Ganga in Kolkata is polluted, but starting from Haridwar, we go on, then Kanpur, Benares, Patna, and of course all these places everywhere. Of course, it may not be like this, but then pollution is a very severe problem, very severe problem. In terms of atmospheric pollution, this is a global map, all of you can see. And this particular map shows that some parts of India and of course China, red means this is the areas where ammonia concentration in the atmosphere is much high. So you can see that India is a global hotspot for ammonia emission, and also its concentration is much more compared to other parts of the world. Of course, as I said, India, China, and then 1 or 2 pockets of America and also in South America. But otherwise, India is really very prominent in terms of ammonia concentration. As I was talking about the nutrient deficiency from soil, earlier we used to think that our soils are deficient only in nitrogen, which is very important for crop growth. But then over the years, you can see this particular figure that not only nitrogen, many other nutrients are also becoming deficient. So currently around 10 nutrients which are essential for plant growth are deficient in our soil. So that means if this nutrient is deficient, so you have to apply that particular nutrient. Either you apply it through manure or through fertilizer, but if you do not apply, the farmers are not going to get good yield. So this is another kind of problem and arising or resulting into soil stress, which is a serious problem. So I was talking about water-related problem, soil-related problem, atmospheric-related problem, climate change, increase in temperature, cyclone, heat wave, cold wave, and so on. So what are the impacts of all of these stresses on agriculture? The impacts will come by few mechanisms or the processes of plant growth. One will be because of increase in temperature. And all of you are students of botany, so you know when temperature increases, what is going to be the impact on plant growth. The duration is going to be reduced, the grain yield is going to be smaller, grains are going to shrivel. At the end, the farmers are going to lose the yield. Second problem comes from weather hazards like cyclone, and of course all of you know what could be the problem. Sea level rise. Again, because of global warming, sea level is rising, and because of rising sea level, the saline water of the sea is getting or intruding inside the good quality soil, good quality water system, and that is another kind of problem. And all the coastal areas of our country, and of course all of you know about Sundarban, which is already a very big sufferer because of these problems. Then of course droughts or floods, which are also going to create problem. And if you combine all of these things, not only abiotic but also biotic stresses, diseases, insects are going to create problem. So these are some of the impacts of abiotic stresses. Now let me tell you, just to explain to you with one example, what is going to be the net impact or net economic impact of the stresses. Say for example, drought. You know, in our country, around 140 million hectare is the net sown area. 141, 142, it varies a little bit. Out of which 75 million hectare is unirrigated. It doesn't have assured irrigation supply. And these are the areas which are prone to drought. Now, because of this drought, India's GDP, gross domestic product, is reduced by around 2 to 5% per annum. And about 5 crore people are affected by drought annually every year. And if severe drought occurs, then that could be affecting around 33 crores people. So you can see how many number of farmers or people are affected. And therefore we say that probably with climate change and water scarcity problem, drought is going to be the next pandemic, and we need a vaccine for corona. Fortunately, we have got a vaccine now, but for drought, we certainly need a very important one. We did some estimation for Maharashtra, and what we observed that only because of drought in one year, Maharashtra farmers might be losing around 22,000 crores. 22,000 crore rupees because of one severe drought. So this is for only one state. Of course, you can imagine what could be the total loss for the whole country. Now friends, the problem is that with all these stresses, abiotic stresses in particular, whether it is soil related or water related or atmospheric related, poor farmers are the worst sufferers. And the irony is, say for example, climate change, because of emission of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, poor farmers, they do not contribute much to global warming or degradation of natural resources. But as they depend more on stress-sensitive natural resources, so whenever any kind of stress comes, they are the worst sufferers. So they are not the cause of the problem. They do not create the problems, but they suffer for the consequences. So this is one irony with all these abiotic stress problems, including climate change and so on. But friends, before I go on and blame more about abiotic stresses and so on, let me tell you, there are one or two positive aspects of abiotic stresses also. May not be for farmers, but there are some positive aspects. What positive aspect? An increase in stressor would negatively affect one certainly, but it might benefit others. How? Let me give you an example of, say, water flooding. When you flood a field with water, and sometimes of course heavy rain will cause that. So because of that flood, all non-aquatic plants will die. All of you can understand. So this is a stress for those plants which cannot grow under waterlogged condition. But for a plant like rice, which is aquatic plant, it is a good thing. So rice needs more water. So you flood the field, other plants will die, but rice will certainly get the benefit. So one is of course going to be negatively affected, but the another one could be positively affected. Similarly, say phytoplankton suffer, but thermophilic zooplanktons, they react positively to the increase in temperature. So increase in temperature is not good, negatively affect crop and agriculture, but some of the organisms might be benefited out of it. For example, say natural wildfire, which is a very serious problem. Even sometimes people die, several of their houses and industries also go. It's a very serious problem. But because of natural wildfire, some of the organisms can still get benefit because others will die. Those which are still can survive will grow, will thrive, and then of course their future will be better. So there are some positive aspects of stresses, but overall it is negative. If I want to summarize is, if there are 10 effects of abiotic stresses, 9 out of 10 are going to be negative, 1 could be positive. So in the end of the day, it is going to be negative. Now, as I said, that it is not that stresses have started only just last year or year before. It is there since the beginning. It is since the beginning, and every organism has to face all kinds of stresses. So naturally, there are certain response mechanism for all these stresses. The response mechanism includes, say, for migration. So if there is any stress, people move away, or some organisms move away from the stressor. So, but unfortunately, plants cannot move. So this is their limitation. Mitigation, there is some mechanism to reduce or eliminate the stressor altogether. Adaptation, so adjust yourself, change yourself in such a way that the adverse impact of the stress could be as minimum as possible. Transduction, transferring of genetic material from one to another, so that the next progeny will be having more tolerance. And then of course evolution, development of a new form from the earlier form which was susceptible. New form is going to be more tolerant. So it is the stress could be air, soil, water, but then some of these natural mechanisms are also there. These are the natural mechanisms. But natural mechanisms take more time for adaptation. We cannot wait for that. We cannot wait for centuries that let the plant adapt itself. No. We want the result this season or next season. So therefore, scientists have started working on several strategies, several mechanisms of how to reduce the stress and how to get higher yield even in the presence of stresses. So in next slides, I will be trying to explain some of those mechanism or management practices by which stresses can be mitigated. Now the strategies are generally 3. I call them in 3 words: avoid, adapt, and alleviate. Avoid means if there is stress, you know that there is going to be some flooding or there is going to be some drought. So do not grow a sensitive crop in those stress regions. I shall tell something more about that. Or adapt, use technologies to reduce the stress on crop. There are some technologies which I shall tell you. Or alleviate, use technologies to reduce the stress from the crop. Sometimes agriculture also generates some kind of stresses, causes some kind of stress. So avoid doing this. So avoid, adapt, and alleviate. But then if you have to develop the full mechanism, there are basically 5 steps. 5 steps for managing abiotic stresses. What are those steps? First is foresee the stress, which we call as forecasting. And nowadays various tools are available. Second is adapt the stress or adaptation or adapting. Third one is respond to the stress, responding, the examples which I was giving. Mitigate the stress, reduce increase in temperature, reduce drought problem. And then finally build capacity to manage the stress, so capacity building. So it is foresee, adapt, respond, mitigate, and build capacity, FARM. So farm building. So you have to develop farm, FARM, so that you will be able to manage the abiotic stresses. And then of course, if you want to put in other ways, so we put it 5 M's: measure the stress, map the stress, model the stress, monitor the stress, and then finally manage the stress. What they say that if anything you can measure, probably you will be able to manage them. Which is measurable is manageable. But if something is not measurable, you cannot manage it. So these are some of the basic understanding of what to do to manage a stress. Now let me give you some very specific solutions of managing abiotic stresses. It could be 2. Number 1 is develop or grow stress tolerant crop cultivars or animal breeds which are tolerant to stresses. And then stress tolerance management practices. So one is variety or breed. Second one is management practices, soil management, water management, fertilizer management, and so on. Let me explain to you all these things. So first target has been to develop crop cultivar or variety which are tolerant to stress. In nature, there are several genotypes or germplasm available which are tolerant to several of these stresses. So first thing should be identify the traits for tolerance. which particular characteristics of a plant will provide tolerance to the plant. So that is a trait. Then identify the donors for that particular trait. Which germplasm, which genotype is having that trait? Identify that one. And then, of course, identify and validate the genes and QTLs, quantitative trait loci, associated with that traits. Pyramid the traits. I shall give you one example. You can pyramid with the conventional breeding or molecular approaches like mass and transgenic, marker assisted selection, and so on. And then, of course, grow in greenhouse, go for field testing, and then release as a variety. So these are the 5 steps. Just let me go into detail. For example, if you want to develop a variety for drought tolerance, say for example you want to develop a maize variety or rice variety which is tolerant to drought. So what you have to do first, identify the traits which provides drought tolerance. What are those traits? So these are the root traits like deep root, thicker root, proliferative root with higher density. So these are the some of the traits, root traits, which will provide more tolerance to a particular plant. Also early vigor, more biomass and high water use efficiency, stomatal behavior, excess of water conservation, early phenology, stray green character, and then of course high water use efficiency. So these are some of the traits, and those plants which have got these traits, those plants are going to be more tolerant. And the plants which do not have these traits, those plants are going to be more susceptible. So our idea is to identify the traits and then identify the donor, the genotype, the germplasm which contains or which have got these traits, and then let me show you how we shall do it next one. So we have got a very large population, and some of these plants could be having those kinds of traits. And there is nowadays, of course, earlier people used to do manually, but now there are very sophisticated equipment, sophisticated tools. One such tool, I shall just give one 2 minutes video, which is called plant phenomics. Let's see how this works.
Plant phenomics facility. High temperature and salinity. Plants grown in chambers are carried on station. Pots carrying the plants are identified through magnetic tag. Automatic weighing and watering system enables application of desired level of plant for imposing and monitoring level of moisture stress through automatic and precise measurements. Different imaging systems are used to characterize stress responses of plants non-destructively in real time. Stress responses of plants are regularly captured from top and side views through imaging systems installed in different chambers. High-resolution cameras are engaged to assess differences in plant shape, color, and plant parts. NIR imaging helps in assessing plant tissue water content non-destructively. Images captured from different angles provide 3D information about the plant response. This is followed by image analysis through a software that converts the images into a huge set of data. These data are transmitted and stored in high-capacity server facility for interpretation of plant responses and then for differentiating the genotypes. This whole process is called plant phenotyping. To phenotype wheat, maize, chickpea, pigeon pea, soybean, onion, and sunflower.
So this is just an example of how very sophisticated equipments are nowadays used to identify those genotypes which have got those particular traits. And now once you have identified the traits and the genotype, and then you go on pyramiding those traits. For example, see here there are 2 plants. One is having high root, another is having stray green. So we put them together, we cross them, and then finally what we get is the combination of these 2, and the resultant plant is drought tolerant with high root and stray green. Stray green means the plant will remain green till 1 or 2 weeks before the maturity. So that's how. So what we do, not only 1 or 2 traits, but more number of traits are pyramided, putting one after another. So trait 1 is put, and then trait 2, trait 3, and then of course finally we get what we call the desired variety. Desired variety with high yield, with good quality, and also tolerance to stresses of drought, high temperature, and so on. And of course, breeding method is also improving. Earlier time, we used to have only conventional breeding, which used to take around 8 to 10 years. Now, and of course, subsequently it came mutation breeding, then came transgenic breeding, and of course, nowadays we have got genome editing kind of technologies. in which you will be able to pyramid those traits, those genes or Q12s in a desired variety in a very short time. And not only one, a number of traits can be put together so that you will be able to get a variety which is of high yielding, good quality, and also tolerant to several of the stresses. Fortunately, several of those varieties have already been developed, and many research institutes are working to develop more and more such kind of varieties. For example, in case of rice, my previous institute, National Rice Research Institute in Pathak, we released two varieties. One is Siardhan 801 and Siardhan 802. We named this variety after the name of Subhash Chandra Bose. As you know, the birthplace of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose is Pathak, so we call it Subhash also. Now, these two varieties are, of course, high yielding, of good quality, but also they are tolerant to drought as well as flood. Earlier, we had variety which was tolerant only to drought or only to flood. But these two are the first time we developed in our institute, which are tolerant to drought as well as flood at the same time. Because, you know, there are some rice growing region, and probably West Bengal could be one, where the same plot of land is affected by drought, and maybe just after 1 week or 2 weeks, there could be serious flood. And not only rice, we have got such varieties for wheat, for high temperature tolerance. This was developed by my previous institute, IARI, Indian Agriculture Research Institute in New Delhi. Similar varieties are also available for maize, sugar cane, and of course for many other crops. But these are of just very recent developments. And the traits are only few, but now we can expect that more and more of these kinds of varieties will be developed, and more abiotic stresses will be addressed by developing new varieties. Second area of our research and study is to grow a totally new crop which are more tolerant to stresses. You can see this particular crop. I don't know whether my students who are attending, they have seen this particular fruit crop or not. This is called dragon fruit. Dragon fruit. This is actually, probably all of you might have seen. This is a very nutritious fruit. Price is also quite large, but this is grown in very water scarce areas. It doesn't need much water. It doesn't need much nutrient. And this is the photograph of my current institute where I am working now in Maharashtra, Baramati. And you can see the flower, and this is being promoted in a very large way. So wherever there is problem of water, wherever the soil is not so fertile, farmers are growing and they are really getting very good price. Not only these, there are some other crops like quinoa, chia, and few others. Our institute currently is working on some of those kinds of crops, which are very tolerant to stresses. Very tolerant to stresses, and as are the new crops, high nutritive value, so those are being promoted and farmers are getting good price. Another approach is to develop variety with two different kinds of parents. For example, here, what we do that in case of some vegetable and also some fruit crops, the scion, the upper part, and the rootstock, the lower part, do we identify or we select the rootstock which is tolerant, and the scion which is not tolerant, but that comes from a variety which is of good quality and good yield. So the upper part, scion, comes from the high yielding good quality variety. The lower part, rootstock, comes from a tolerant variety, and when you put them together, then you get a variety which is high yielding, good quality, and also tolerant to some of the stresses. For example, these varieties for tomato, capsicum, and chilies, our current institute, they have already started developing such kind of thing. So these are in terms of developing new varieties which are more tolerant. Then, of course, as I said, management could be another one. Manage water in such a way that you can grow a crop with minimum amount of water. And of course, there are several tools and technologies. All of you know about drip irrigation, you know about sprinkler irrigation, sensor-based irrigation nowadays are being promoted. Next one is application of fertilizer. Again, there are several ways by which we can apply fertilizer in such a way that with minimum application, the plants will be getting their desired or required amount of nutrient, and the loss of the nutrient will be very low. You know, the loss of fertilizer is very high rather. For example, nitrogen, which is the most important fertilizer, its uptake efficiency is only 35%. That means If you apply 100 kg of nitrogen fertilizer, only 35 kg is taken up by the crop. Remaining amount of 65 kg is lost to the system. But if you adopt some of these technologies, which you call as 4 R's, right source, right rate, right time, right place, then the efficiency will increase from 35 to say 55, 60%. And some of the materials nowadays available like neem coated urea, use of leaf color chart to see whether the plant or crop really needs nitrogen, urea replacement, soil health card, a very big program of the government of India, and the very latest nano fertilizer. All of these tools are being used nowadays to increase the efficiency. And then of course there are certain plant metabolics which can also be metabolites which can also be applied to ameliorate or to alleviate the stresses. But not one at a time. We need to put everything together. So very good variety, very good water management, very good fertilizer management, and when we put everything together, we call them integrated crop management. So when we put everything, then only the problem of abiotic stresses can be minimized. Friends, before I conclude, let me also tell one or two more things. That though I was telling that there are several problems or abiotic stresses, which is very, very severe problems, I also showed you that there are some technologies available, including variety, water management, fertilizer management, and so on. Besides this, there is a good opportunity also. Opportunity to reduce the stress, opportunity to increase the productivity and quality. This is one example which we call as potential yield. You know, whatever yield farmers get today, say farmers of West Bengal, where the average yield of rice is only paddy is only 4 tons per hectare. But in West Bengal, we can grow up to 8 tons per hectare. Some of the good farmers, they get up to 6 tons, 7 tons. But we can really go up to even 8 to 9 tons per hectare. So that means still there is a gap between what can be achieved and what actually we are getting. So if we can narrow down this gap by using more new technologies, new varieties, new management, then probably we still can increase the productivity and profitability of the farmers. So this is what we summarize, that if you simply practice old traditional method, then probably yield is going to be less. But then if you go on adopting new technologies, new variety, new management, new fertilizer, new resources, then not only you can increase, you can even compensate the loss. So this particular gram shows that if you do not use new technology, then because of abiotic stress, the yield is going to reduce, say up to 20%. But if you go on adopting few of these technologies, then not only you will be able to compensate the loss, but also you will be able to increase the productivity. So this is the key. Our farmers really need to understand the importance of the stresses and also understand what are the options, management options, varieties, water management, and so on, so that the loss due to abiotic stress will be as minimum as possible and they will be able to harvest more. It has been shown, my current institute where I am working, earlier it was established in 2009, and this was the original site. You can see it was totally kind of deserted look. And 10 years later, this is what the current institute looks like. So you can certainly convert a barren land into a highly productive land, So what is the way forward? Only 5 points I would say, and then I shall stop. So maybe another 4 or 5 minutes. Firstly, we need to do which we call as eco-regional planning. Eco-regional planning means we need to identify which region, which area is suitable for which crop. For example, rice can very easily be grown in West Bengal, Odisha. You need not to grow it in Punjab, because to grow rice in Punjab, they have to apply 25 to 30 irrigations and the groundwater is depleted. Similarly for other crop also. So identify the region where a crop can be grown without degrading the natural resources. So this is first. Second one is of course general, and our students are also here, reducing food loss. You know, we really lose a very huge amount of food. Globally, they say 1/3 of the food produced is lost. 1/3 is lost. So why to produce more when you are going to lose 1/3 of it? So this is another area. Third one is choosing local and seasonal food. Local food, seasonal food are the ones which are also tolerant to abiotic stresses. Growing food locally instead of transporting it from very long distances, we can really grow. And this what gives us idea that wherever there is some kind of land or space available, we should grow our food. And then of course finally using the emerging science and technology. Lots of developments have taken place. Many more developments are happening, starting from yielding, stress tolerant variety. I gave 1 or 2 examples. Automation and mechanization in terms of soil management, water management, and so on. Efficient need-based input use, and then of course livestock, fisheries, and so on. So all of these new technologies are nowadays available, including drone, solar radiation, sensors, and everything. So we really need, and you are the students, and you are going to do some good research in your, of course, masters and PhD, and also you are going to work in this area. So keep a vigil, keep an open eye to know what are the new technologies, what are the new sciences coming about, and then use this. Friends, till 1950, our farming in this country was a traditional farming. Then we started mechanization, then Green Revolution came in 1960s or 70s. And because of Green Revolution, our country, which was a food scarce country, we had to depend for food to other countries like USA. Food used to come from USA and then only our people will be getting sufficient amount of food. So from that ship to mouth, from a food scarce country, our India became then food shortage country. And currently we are not only food sufficient country, but also we are food surplus country. So from scarcity to shortage to sufficient and then food surplus country we have become because of all these developments. So it came Green Revolution, then of course new biotechnological tools I was mentioning, and now we need to do which we call as precision agriculture. Use all the inputs, use all the technologies, use all the resources so precisely that it is not lost, its efficiencies are very high, and you also get very high yield and good quality. So therefore, these 5 aims we really need to do, which we call as to achieve stress-smart agriculture, stress-smart agriculture. Of course, marketing is important. Monsoon, we need to develop some tools for weather forecasting, weather service, mechanization, management, and of course, mainstreaming, what we are doing today, telling our farmer, developing the capacity of our farmers to adapt, to use some of these new tools. So friends, let me conclude by saying that abiotic stresses are intensifying with climate change and natural resource degradation. So it is really serious problem. To make agriculture stress tolerant, we need to have eco-regional planning with integration of all the technologies which I just explained. And for that, we need to understand, we need to do some basic research as well to understand the plant-soil microbial interactions in response of abiotic stresses. And for that, all the institute, not only research institute or universities, but colleges and every other need to be received for sustainable agriculture, shifting from production oriented to sustainable agriculture orientation. And for everything, we need science-backed policy for enhancing production, procurement, pricing, promotion, and so on. So these are just few points which I wanted to share with all of you. And friends, with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank each and every one of you, particularly our Principal Maharaj and all the teachers and the lecturers and professors, and most importantly, our students of today who have joined online with this presentation. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much for getting me associated with a prestigious institution like yours. And thank you one and all. Now back to the control room.
Thank you, sir, for your very nice and lucid presentation. More especially the graphics, the animation, and the video was very much self-explanatory. Thank you, sir. Now, may I ask student if you can ask if you have any queries.
Hello,
I hope.
sir. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
please
yes.
go ahead.
Sir, myself Niloy Shah from PG Botany. Sir, I have two questions. Sir, first of all, you have mentioned about microbial pollution, sir. Microbial pollution. Sir, how it affect the agriculture? Can you please define a little bit?
And I don't know whether you really got it, microbial pollution, but of course, microbes can also cause pollution. You know, microbes, say bacteria, fungus, and actinidea, these are very, very useful for converting the nutrients. But then these are also the agents for causing diseases. These are also the agents causing some harm to the plants. So in that connection, you can. But of course, I was talking about pollution in other way, or chemical pollution, water pollution, and other pollutions also. But microbe, when you talk about, so there could be two. One is beneficial, and of course, other ones are harmful. The ones which will be causing diseases and other problems, those are the ones which are going to create some kind of problem there.
Okay. Sir, and the sir, second one, sir, what are nano fertilizers? Sir, you have nano
Yes,
fertilizers.
yes.
Yes,
That's
sir.
right. Yes. Yeah, probably all of you know what is nanoparticle. Very small particle of less than 1 angstrom size. So what
Yeah,
happens?
sir.
Yeah. So because of their very small size, these are the particles which can be absorbed by the plants very easily, and then can also absorb some of the other ions around them. So the efficiency of these particles are very high. So currently what they are doing, earlier we used to apply only urea. Urea is NH2CO, NH2. Now they have produced nano urea. So urea, along with these nanoparticles of this nano size, and because of this, the availability of nitrogen in this has increased. And as a result, you can get the same yield with application of less amount of nitrogen. So for example, if you have to earlier apply, say, 10 kilograms of ordinary urea, now applying only 500 grams of urea, you will be able to get the same kind of yield. Of course, this has not been so popular as of now. It is still in trial stage. One company, you know, probably IFCO, India's Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative. So they have already started its demonstration with a large number of farmers, few thousands. So probably it is going to take 1 or 2 more years, and if it becomes successful, then it is going to be used by large number of farmers all over the country. So the idea is to increase its efficiency, and by nano urea or nano fertilizer, the efficiency is going to increase. Of course, the claim they say it is going to be around double. As I said, the nitrogen use efficiency as of now is around 35%. It could be increased up to 70% or so. But even if it is not up to 70%, even if it is increased up to 50% or 60%, then also the benefit is going to be tremendous. So this is what the concept is there.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, myself Shivaji Nath from Botany. Sir, I
Yes,
have a question.
Yeah,
That
sure. Go ahead.
at the
Yeah.
point, natural wildfire can cause some productivity in ecosystems to burn out every once in a while so that new organisms can grow. So, sir, can you please elaborate this
No,
point?
that's right. Yes. No, what I was trying to illustrate to all of you, the abiotic stresses are bad. These are having negative impact on crop, on many organisms. But there could be some exceptions at some point of time, and wildfire is one. So what does wildfire does? When wildfire takes place, all the plants, including grasses and everything, will be destroyed, will be simply burnt away. So many trees will be burnt, grasses will be burnt, many crops also will be burnt. But then there are some plants, and seeds of some plants will still survive. So when those which are still surviving, they will be getting a good opportunity to come up, because then there is no competition. All others have gone. All others have been totally burned. So now they are getting a totally open field. So they will be able to grow at a very fast rate. And there are some trees, there are some plants which can really get the benefit. You know, earlier time, even now also, some farmers in Northeast, they used to practice Zoom cultivation. I don't know whether you have heard this term or not. Zoom cultivation is they will burn, intentionally they will burn the forest. And then once the forest is cleared, all the weeds have gone, all the plants have gone, then they will plow the field and then they will sow rice, wheat or something like that. So by burning all these weeds and everything is gone, the crop, the plants after dying, the airs, the minerals and all the nutrients are now deposited in the soil. And when you sow the next crop, then the crop is going to be good. But then it has got some benefit, but the negative aspect is much more. So therefore, Zoom cultivation is no more recommended. It is discouraged that you should not be doing Zoom cultivation. You should not be burning the forest intentionally. But the point is, many things are negative, adversely affecting the plants. But then some plants could be benefited out of these kinds of stresses also. And I gave another example of flooding. As you know, rice, if it is flooded, it is benefited, but all other plants will be dying. And this is one of the reasons why farmers flood the rice fields. Because of flooding of rice fields, all the weeds and every other plants will die. Only rice will survive. So this is what other plants will not survive, will not be benefited, but few plants, few organisms will still be benefited because of abiotic stresses. So these examples I gave just to have a complete idea of what is abiotic stress. It is not only negative for every location, for every organism. Some organisms still could be benefited out of it.
I understand.
Okay.
Sir, I am Srinjoy from Botany. Am I
Yes,
audible?
Sanjay. Yes. Yes, Sanjay, go ahead.
Sir, the
Srinjay, you are not clearly audible. Can you repeat?
but increase. Sir,
No, sorry, Srinjay, I could not hear you.
Hello.
Sanjay, you can write in chat box because your voice is not audible. You can write so that sir can understand your question.
Yes, that is a better way. Okay, I think in the meantime, if any other person has got any query, you can raise it.
আর কেউ কিছু জিজ্ঞাসা করতে চাও?
Sir, can I ask some questions, sir?
Oh, sure, please.
Yes, yes.
Sir, BSc Botany and BSc Agriculture. What is the difference in this particular subject?
Okay. Of course, the things are different. You know the subjects which you study in BSc Botany, and in agriculture. I think there is some kind of echo is coming. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
In agriculture or crop protection or agriculture per se is also a branch of botany to start with, and initially it used to be botany only. But in agriculture, besides studying these plant processes, we have got some subjects like plant physiology, genetics and plant breeding, and so on. But beside this, the other part is the management aspect. Soil management, water management, engineering aspect. So what kind of machinery, tractor, power tiller, all these chemicals, pesticides. So one part is your basic understanding, which is botany, or another way of botany. Second one is how to put the knowledge of botany into its practical purpose. So in botany, you understand the plant process, you understand all the details of this. But in agriculture, only a limited time is devoted to the basic understanding process. Major time is devoted for its practical purpose, how to develop a new variety, how to develop new management practices, how to manage water, how to develop new machine. So the practical part of what you can call botany could be in a way in agriculture. So in agriculture, most of the subjects will be practical oriented. agriculture oriented, crop production oriented, or animal production oriented. And that's where the difference lies. Okay.
Sir, I also have a question.
Yes, sure.
It said there is a point that states for drought and heat tolerance. In this point, there is a line that stomatal behavior and access for water conservation.
Yes.
So can you please elaborate that point?
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yes. You know, closing and opening of stomata is the one which controls the whole transpiration process. So if the stomata is open, so more and more water will be lost from the plant and from the leaves. And if it is closed, then of course the plant is going to conserve the moisture inside. So there are some plants, say for example, some plants which grow in desert region, like cactus, for example. Now cactus plant has got both. Its surface of the leaves or the modified stem is also having waxy. Because of waxy nature, the evaporation or the water or moisture loss from the plant is very, very small, almost nil. And closing of stomata. So if a plant or if a genotype has got a kind of stomatal opening which remains closed for longer time, opens for a very small period of time, then it is also going to conserve moisture. So we search for those kinds of genotypes where there is some kind of wax, because more wax, less evaporation, less transpiration, less requirement of water, and similarly opening as well as closing of stomata. So these kind of traits, if we can combine with a traditional and high yielding varieties, then that particular variety is going to be more tolerant to water stresses. It can conserve more moisture within itself, and it can be grown with minimum amount of water. So that's what the trait, and that's what is the objective of developing those water or stress or moisture tolerant varieties, drought tolerant varieties.
Yes, sir. Understand.
Is there any other question from the student side? With the permission from the principal Mora sir and Dr. H. Pathak sir, may I conclude the session?
Of course, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, you conclude, because sir actually more than 1 hour is talking.
No, it is okay. It is okay. No problem, sir. No problem.
Yes, it is already 9:15. It is
Okay, no
maybe
problem. No
dinner
problem.
time for
No problem. It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure.
Sir, it is our pleasure also. It is my privilege to offer vote of thanks on this occasion. On behalf of our college and Department of Botany, I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to our respected director, sir, Dr. Himanshu Pathak, sir, for his beautifully explanation about the effect of abiotic stress on plant and their production. Climate change is now an inevitable event. Global warming is now a burning issues for today's world. And in this situation, today's topic is very much relevant, and Pathak sir has rightly explained the opportunities about these topics and the abiotic stress for the management of agricultural production. I must mention a special thanks to our principal Moras, the catalyst that he inspired us to do our best and stands as a pillar of power. And with deep sense of gratitude to our head of the department, Professor B.V. Chattopadhyay and Dr. Bishwit Ghosh, and other faculty members who always give support and encouragement to organize the this kind of lecture series. Finally, I would like to thank our budding star, our dear students who made this event successful. Hope today's lecture will instigate their will to do good in their future endeavor. With this all, I thank you all, sir, again, and thank you.
Yeah. May I before we leave, may I request all of you to please unmute your video so that we can
we can see all of you and then we can take a picture also. Is it possible?
Yes, possible.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so all of you are in different places in your home.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, Dr. Roy, any idea when your college is going to open so that students can come back?
Sir, it may be after end of October. There is Puja vacation in the October. After Puja vacation, there may be a chance.
Okay.
There may be a chance. Government may give permission us to open the college.
Okay. So now you are taking your classes online. So everybody is in their home.
Yes.
Okay, good. So students, are you enjoying online classes?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So it is very difficult for the practical based subject to take the online classes. It is mainly based on theory basis, and we also miss the student on the classroom interaction very much.
Right. Yes, of course, those who have been teacher know, person like me, we are habituated to see the students in front of us and then only we can speak. If there is nobody in front of us, sometimes we also don't feel that kind of energy to speak.
Absolutely. Sir.
No, sir, offline classes are best, obviously.
Yeah.
The interaction are
No, of course, there are some advantages. As I said, there are some benefits of abiotic stress also.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so probably let us take it.
Actually, Pathak sir, when you come Kolkata, please inform us. You have to visit our institute, sir.
Certainly, sir. It will be my pleasure. I generally go because my family, my parents are still there in Purulia.
Yes,
and not only that, all my other family members. For example, my youngest brother, he lives in Kolkata only. He serves in West Bengal Civil Service. So, for example, I will be going there next month only, before Puja. I mean, Puja I will be spending in West Bengal.
Okay, sir.
So I generally go, and certainly I'll be very, very happy to visit your college and also meeting all of you personally, meeting all of you.
Yes, sir.
Either maybe in your classroom or somewhere. It will be really.
It is our pleasure, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll be really looking forward for that kind of opportunity.
Yes, sir. We are also, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity and good night. Shubharatri.
Thank you, sir.
তোমরা সবাই ভালো থাকো, আরো ভালোভাবে পড়াশোনা করো এবং পুজো ভালোভাবে কাটাও, কিন্তু কোভিডে একটু সাবধানে থেকো আর কি, যাতে করে বেড়ে যায়। So I wish all the best to all of you. I wish all the best to all of you. And of course, my email ID is there. So if anytime, if you feel that I will be able to help you in any way in your career, please feel free to contact me, to write to me. I shall certainly will be very, very happy to do that. Thank you very much, and wish each and every one of you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Good night.